Welcome to Indie 5. This time we have a special episode featuring non-metal music, totally. So what's going on here? Well, Dungeon Synth. Dramatic music playing. Think of Mortis, and the like from the 90s. Bands like Von Graven by Mr. Satyr of Satyricon, and Vond, Morty's side project, and the other 1990s synth music created by metal people. And you have pretty much going on what is dungeon synth music all about. It's not ambient, it's not trendy synth wave, it's not obviously game or movie soundtrack, but yet it is kind of related to all of that. Those who remember like late 80s or early 90s synthesizer hits type of collections, or even earlier like 1980s synthwave stuff, the happier stuff, or the more kind of a moody stuff, think of Jan Hammer and the like, kind of have an idea what is going on. And those who like, and even better so, know Morty's music from the early 90s, like the pre-industrial stuff, are very much home with this kind of music, or at least if they like that. So this is what this special is all about. Well, sort of anyway. And also, it's gonna be lots of tapes featured here. Without further ado, let's open up the first one. This is Fiendish Imp from United Kingdom. One-man project, simply by a person called The Imp, a kind of anonymous, well, not anonymous, but unknown personality who has been creating this music. This is kind of a demo tape, some 17 minutes only, even though there's like 8 tracks all in all. And this is kind of a hilarious experimental stuff, because some of it actually reminds me of 80s video game music, kind of like hilarious, very experimental, and really short tracks, even less than a minute at some points, even though they're the longer tracks as well. Kind of a curious release in a way. I mean, this is a kind of a limited format tape, as well as a digital release, and it's kind of a combination of these kind of a Mortis like of dungeon synth, but it's also a little bit off track at some points. So if you have like sweet spot sweet soft spot in your heart for, you know, kind of a, like early video game music and stuff like that, and also Mortis, then you should go for this. But if you are really picky when it comes to this kind of keyboard related music, then maybe go for the samples before you go blindly ordering. Not very high quality, but kind of interesting, kind of a sympathetic in a ways. Next we go to Germany, called Bahkauv, which is also, in as far as I know, a one-man project, supposedly the guy here. This is full-length release. As you can see, 6 tracks, less than the Fiendish Imp ones, but here most of the tracks are quite long, from like 8 to 11 minutes or so. And this is kind of a more minimal in style. Once again, I could say lots of Mortis stuff here. However, the theme is entirely different. If Fiendish Imp is kind of like old folk tales kind of stuff, well, this is something like that, but more mythological creatures and whatnot in German area, and more about this kind of a castle romanticizing dungeon synth music. Actually, more about the happy kind of stuff, even if there are some melancholic parts as well. Once again, really much in the Mortis, and way more than this Fiendish Imp, for instance, because this is more like creating those vast soundscapes, you know, kind of creating the atmosphere, which is just more on the background, like hanging there, almost like ambient-like, but way more melodic, and as such kind of easier to hum to and get to that feeling. Kind of like when you're traveling countryside. This is the kind of music. Maybe if you're reading a book or getting into fantasy literature, I don't know, role-playing games and whatnot, this might be your selection of soundtrack. Or maybe when you go to sleep and have this kind of a nice things to feed your imagination when you go to bed. Very Mortis like, not maybe necessarily better, no worse, but same kind. Not really my kind of type of music when it comes to purely instrumental music, but it certainly has its forte, so to speak, with nice atmospheric parts. So, should you be your cup of tea, definitely go check it out on Bandcamp. The links are below as usual. Number 3 in this ambient special or dungeon synth special is Lousberg, The Fog Beneath My Feet. This is a German band that actually released this one originally, if I remember correctly, 2015. So this is not very new tape release. As you can see, pretty simple, kind of atmospheric cover design. And inside the basic stuff, as you can see, kind of a metalhead vibe with the battery history. Once again, these kind of remind me of those black metal heads in the 90s. Think of Mortis, Satyr of von Graven and Sadrikon. And of course Fenris with his Neptune Towers, Burzum with his synth albums and all that stuff. This reminds me of those guys doing synth music. So Dungeon Synth in special, you know, kind of as a side project. So Lousberg's music is, with this particular release, I might want to underline, it's kind of atmospheric stuff. It's kind of a minimal ambient-like stuff combined with this synth music. Not very much going on, not like melodies or stuff like that. Very simple, like, let's keep these keyboards down for a while and then shift to something else. And as such, it works just fine. Obviously, the soundscape is very 1990s, so it's kind of a retro if we're talking about nowadays release and how synths of nowadays sound like. But then again, this so-called dungeon synth is all about being retro in the first place. Well, maybe the original ones were more of genuine pieces of their time, but anything done like 2010s or something and going for the sound that was its peak around like mid-90s, obviously it's kind of a retro. You know what I'm talking about, no denying that. But in that sense, I think this Lousberg is a bit better than your average synth album. It's not very creative, and it's definitely not pure dark ambient or anything like that. But it has its moments. I could totally imagine this going on, say, in a art gallery as a background music of sorts or whatever. So not bad in any way. However, this next Lousberg release, which I have here also as a tape, Wintergemälde. I don't know how to speak German, sorry for that. This is, yet again, a tape release, as you can see, 2 songs obviously only. And this is more wintry theme and album, 30 minutes approximately. And this is newer, like 2017 release, if I remember correctly. But this is not as good. This is more an off-track, more this kind of a simple keyboard going on. But it's also losing its touch here, if we compare to the previous one. And, well, obviously, I don't know why. What is the reason for artists to go this direction and why go in a bad direction, but obviously these are a matter of taste as well. To be honest, I think Lousberg has still its moments. It's partially good, but this one is less than a mediocre album. And it's because this is just way more kind of a boring. It's not as creative. It's going to places which are not that good, even your typical average dungeon synth stuff. And yet again, it's not even ambient. It's just somewhere in between, but not doing the cherry picking the right way. So I cannot really recommend the latter one. But the real treat is in the end, as it's always supposed to be. It's pretty much the same genre, but also a little bit different. And why the last one is the best one, because this is a vinyl release with really nice thing. I took the liberty to already remove the plastic in order to save a little bit of time. And also I didn't put this one back here into... This is Forgotten Pathways and Shrouded in Mystery. Originally released as a demo. There's a lot of text here explaining this whole thing and showing the original cover work and whatnot. already released 1997 or 1998, or done in anyways those years. And now it's for the first time it's in vinyl, and it's double vinyl. As you can see, there are two LPs inside. The other one is basically just a bonus track, big or bonus LP, bonus vinyl, because there are only like 3 songs here, and they are filling just, you know, the one side of the album here. This is just for the sake of looking good. As you can see, Germany since 1997, Dungeon Synth. And the other one is obviously just music. These are bonus tracks which were not originally part of this Shrouded in Mystery. The second one, this is just, you know, 2 sides, 5 tracks in total. Pretty long tracks, some of them. And as such, it's a full-length material. And obviously then we have this cover, which is, you know, listing the tracks here, like side A, side B, and then side C, which is the bonus section. And as you can see, there's the In Caverns Deep. It's the same song, but just in a different version, like a 1 minute shorter, this bonus version. Very nice release as such by Dunkelheit Productions, which is also usually focused on extreme metal. But they have these there synth section. If you didn't figure it out, they're all Dunkelheit releases, what we have here. So we could just as well call it Dunkelheit Dungeon Synth compilation or special. But let's talk about the Forgotten Pathways music a little bit. It's different than the other albums on this particular video, because it's not Dungeon Synth as such. It's more like a medieval folk-oriented keyboard music, medieval ambient as it was labeled by, I think, the original artist. And I think it fits really well to describe the music here. This is more like creating those kind of a folk music type of melodies, rhythms and whatnot, but, you know, kind of a 90s keyboard wise. Nowadays years, obviously it sounds a little bit crappy, but like, you know, like some so-called crappy heavy metal, but in a way it's also part of the atmosphere and mystery of this kind of music. It's part of the appeal. And as such, even though this was originally demo recording, I don't think it's that bad. I mean, it's quite nice in the terms of its own genre. It's all obviously quite plastic sounding, considering, well, 90s keyboards often sounded like. So it's not like, you know, those drums sound like genuine medieval drums, but more like keyboard version of these rhythm instruments. And also the same applies to melodies as well, obviously. So as such, it reminds me of 1990s, maybe the early or mid parts video game music. You know, this medieval strategy game where you just build your own city or kingdom or whatever, or also those role-playing games which had these kind of medieval games, and obviously the music was the result of the era. So in those terms, this is like very much a soundtrack of nostalgia in so many ways, which is both a good and a bad thing. And more so, this is way more kind of a progressed than your average Dungeon Synth, where the ideas are really simple, like, you know. So this is much more stuff going on. Maybe some people who are deep into like more these early works want and that kind of stuff, maybe this is even too much. But then again, if you want more kind of lively music, this is definitely the artist you might be looking for. So in my books, this kind of a medieval folk ambient or whatever, I think it's a little bit more interesting than your average Dungeon Synth. Obviously, Dungeon Synth is kind of acquired taste. Some people just kind of worship early Mortis, want and whatnot. Me, I'm more of the extremes in this sense that I usually go total like ambient, and I don't want to have any melodies, no rhythms, no spoken words, vocals, whatnot. So most Dungeon Synth stuff just falls like in wrong category when it comes to me. So that's why I'm not basically putting any one of these releases on a pedestal and going, look at yippee, they are so great. I may be a little bit wrong target group, if you will. But then again, I also like some synth music. I have a soft spot for some 1980s synthesizer stuff. Think of Jan Hammer, some Jean-Michel Jarre, and stuff like that. Jarre. But anyhow, this is kind of a niche type of music, and for some it's totally cool and really likable, especially if it's coming from metal artists. And for some it's just like no go, not a chance, not beyond those mandatory instrumental intros with so many black metal albums. So if you are into that kind of stuff, give it a chance. These are all pretty much worthwhile, except maybe for that other Lousberg album and the Fiendish Imp, which is a bit more closer to this Forgotten Pathway stuff. But if you had to just pick one, I don't know, maybe the Lousberg one or this Shrouded in Mystery, because they are more better style. But overall, no great masterpieces among these Indie 5 releases, but no totally faulty ones, no crappy ones there either. If it is your choice, go listen to those samples in the links below, and if it's not, hey, I cannot help you or change your mind. Anyhow, thanks for your time, thanks for your interest, see you soon, and if you have any questions, comments, or whatever, put them in the comment box below. See ya, and take care.